So it's always neat to talk to clients, especially clients that are moving up or selling their first home and moving to a new home, and hearing what they liked and what they didn't like about their first house.
Hmm.
When you're working with a first time home buyer, there's a lot of excitement, there's a lot of nervousness. And they always want, oh, I need to have this in my house, or I need to do this. Um, and then they buy that and then they live there, and it works. But then on their second house, they're like, oh, well, I wish I would have done this different, or I wish I would have, not had this or had this. So it's always neat. I remember one client specifically, his first house, he was like, well, I really need to have a bathroom on the main level, at least a half bath. I'm like, okay, and you kind of dig deeper with questions like, okay, well, what do you need to have that bathroom for? And of course, he was in his early 20s, and he's like, well, I want to have people over, and I don't want them to have to go upstairs to use the bathroom.
Hmm.
I'm like, okay, that's a very valid point. Um, Ended up, I was like, well, what if you bought a ranch? Then everything's on one level. You'd have your bathroom right there. And he was like, oh yeah, that would be great. So he bought a ranch home, and it was perfect for what he needed at that time. Um, his second home, he bought a two-story house. It did have a half bath on the main level, but that his priorities, I think, had changed at that point. Um, he had gotten married, had kids, so he went from the bachelor life of wanting to have people over and them to be able to use the bathroom on the main level to I need more bedrooms, I need more space, I need to spread out for my family. So,
Yeah, I definitely, my first house I bought as a single person, and there were things, I think I talked about this before, like, you know, it was a new construction, so you get to put your little touches on it. And I said yes to all the things and didn't utilize any of them. Like, remember, I'm trying to remember when I bought this house. Like early 2000s, but those um like niche things, you know what I'm talking about? Where you put your TV, it wasn't a built-in, it was just this like hole,
oh yes,
and not above the fireplace. It was like on the side of the fireplace, and but that was extra. And I was like, "Oh yeah, I need that." I hated that. It was tacky. There was nowhere to put your cords. They were just all like shoved behind there. Uh and then it was one for like flowers or something. It was like in a corner, in the hallway.
oh
And I
yes.
was like, "Oh yeah," and with the lighting on the top of it. And I was 21. Like, what did I think I was going to be putting in this little niche? That was terrible. I was on a I think some of the stuff, it was like by default I didn't think about because it wasn't, I didn't really care about, but like I was on a corner lot and my backyard was nothing.
Oh yes.
It was my backyard, bless her, her name was Miss Ina. Her backyard, and like, I mean, my backyard was a perfect view of the side of her house. And, so whatever was going on that left side of her house, I had full view. And but I didn't have kids. I was not outside grilling or anything like that. So I think, like, yeah, when we bought our house, I know you'll remember this, which we weren't married yet, so you weren't living in the house, so it didn't affect you until after you moved in. But that driveway was awful. But I did not care because I just parked in the garage.
When you parked in the garage, it was flat, and
Yes, flat, walked
you,
right in the house, no
yeah, it was
problems.
great.
So when you moved in after we got married, you were like, I hate this hill. Because when you're trying to get a kid out on a hill that's literally like this, the doors falling behind you, or like bringing in the groceries. So that was one of your requirements when we were moving, was like the driveway has to be flat.
Has to be flat. Yes, because we had this grand notion too that when we moved, we got a house with a basement, and we were going to put all the stuff that we had in our garage in the basement, and we were going to park our cars in the garage.
That's
And
so funny because that's not
that
how that's going
did
down.
not happen. Now I will say we did try to park a car in the garage for a little while,
Yeah.
and
And I don't do good with those kind of restrictions, apparently. I mean, how long did we? I think we had the van for like 2 days, and I.
No, it was less than 24 hours. Less than 24 hours, we had a brand new minivan, and you scratched the mirrors coming out of the
Trying to
garage.
get out of the
The
garage.
first time you backed out of the garage.
Yeah, which is the last time I parked in there.
No, remember we got it fixed, and then you scratched them about
Did
two
it
days after
again.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then we decided that we were not parking cars in the garage anymore.
Well, not that one for sure. And
Yes.
now we have Sanford and Son out there.
Yes, we have so much stuff in our garage and our
And we
basement.
have a
And
shop
we
in the
have,
basement with all the stuff.
yes, and we have cars in the driveway. So that is a great benefit to having a flat driveway is because we have so many
You
cars.
can
Now we
bring
have
everybody else's stuff into your garage and store it.
teenagers and yeah, we have 4 cars in the driveway. So we play the car shuffle game every time somebody has to
Yeah,
leave.
musical cars. It's a great Dutton pastime.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So
And half of our garage, you should consider this if you have multiple children, because half of our garage is Chase's stuff.
bikes and toys and balls
Yes,
and
we have tennis balls and baseballs and bats and tailgate chairs and yeah, sometimes I go out there and I'm like, is this even all ours?
yeah, I think we accumulate stuff from the neighbors too.
Yes, we do.
So
Soccer goals.
yes,
I'm sure they have some of our stuff too.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do think like yeah, like you were talking about your first client, what he was looking for like as a bachelor, like yeah, your lifestyle changes and people don't stay in their houses as long as they used to, but I do think it's like important to like think forward a little bit on, could you start your family in this house? That's definitely not stuff I was thinking about with my first two purchases.
Yeah. Yeah, I was actually surprised with a client that we closed recently. First house, young family, but their expectation was that this was going to be their forever home or their home that they raised their kids in. It was interesting with a recent client. They uh, young family were looking for a home, and their expectation was that this home was going to be their home that they raised their kids in, through college. And I mean, their first child, the youngest child, is a year old, which I thought that was interesting because a lot of people, buy a starter home, something that they live in for 4 or 5 years, 6 or 7 years, something like that. And then as their family grows, they move up.
Hmm.
Whereas this family wanted to buy a home that was large enough for them to raise their children in and not have to move. So I think that's interesting, and I think a lot of times the reason people look at their first home and they're like, oh, this doesn't work and this doesn't work, or I wish I would have done that, or wish I would have done this. I think a lot of it has to do with that their priorities changed as they live there.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
like the first example where he was single and looking for a more or less like a bachelor pad, and then as he got married and had kids, it's like, well, this house doesn't work for me anymore. I need something different.
Yeah. I was not considering a growing family when I bought either one of like when I was single and bought houses. And especially now that I mean, like, we have a joint household with all the things and all the children and all their things. Like, we have a lot of friends that, like, they move pretty much every 5 years.
Yeah.
And we thank you for your business. I could not do that. I would not want to do that. I do not want to pack up this house until we are moving to where we will be going and living to until we die. Like, I don't not want to do that multiple times. It is miserable and stressful, and they just do it like it's nothing. But I mean, I know some people's circumstances, like, if you're in the military or you have a job and like they tell you you're moving to Dallas, you have no choice. But
Right.
I am really glad that we sort of have a choice because you don't have to do all that.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we talked about it. I mean, and moving is not fun. We try and smooth out the process as much as possible. But yeah, the packing and the unpacking and the decorating and the coordination of all of that it's a hassle. Um, but it has to be done in certain circumstances.
Yeah.
Uh,
So talking about decorating, I think for sure what I cared about and wanted in my younger years is not at all what I care about and want now that I'm mid 40s. Um, because yeah, I definitely wanted a house that looked like a Pinterest board
mm,
when I was younger, and like even my first apartment and my first house, it was very nicely decorated because I didn't have children, and I mean, so like when I moved into my second house, I had to sell the kitchen table because then I now have a small child, and a glass table is a terrible idea when you have little people. So it took about two times of her knocking into that thing and one like getting a huge, bruise on her head and also like being afraid it was going to like shatter or fall down or whatever. So sold that thing. And then like in our and I love home decor and I love other people's houses that are done up with the beautiful like tablescapes and vignettes and you have all this shelves and stuff and like
what is a vignette?
that's what they call it when you like stack I don't know how to explain it to you. It's like if you have we have one on the
Oh,
table, like, you have the little thing and you make it cute. I don't know how to explain this to you.
okay.
But
We all know
anyways,
what a vignette is.
women do.
Okay.
Anyway, but that does not work for our kids. Like we can't have nice things.
No, we talked about that before. We talked about that when our youngest was born, the boy, and you wanted new furniture, and I'm
Oh
like, I'm
my
not
gosh.
buying new furniture until he quits destroying the furniture that we have. Yeah, I think people's priorities change. I mean, I think there are things that people realize in houses that they wish they would have done differently. Um, I always point out with like split level and split foyer homes, you get a lot of square footage in those homes. They're usually well priced, but you have a lot of stairs. And so I think, with younger people, that's not an issue, walking up and down the stairs. And then, as you get older, it's like, oh, wait, I don't want to walk stairs anymore.
Mhm.
So I do think there are things that you could look out for or be aware of when you're looking for your first home. I mean, you definitely want to get the priorities that you have at the time, like, okay, what do I need? A lot of times it's the location, or close to a job, close to a school district, close to some type of entertainment or social life that you're looking for. So I think that's an important thing. The size or the number of bedrooms and bathrooms that you're looking for, those are always important things that people want to look out for. um, so getting your priorities together of what you're looking for at that time will help you in narrowing down a house that will actually work for you. um, Not to say that your priorities may change in the future and then the next house you look for is different than the first one. I think that's normal. um, but I don't know that there's like a right or wrong, like, oh, don't buy a house with this or don't buy a house with that. It's, what are your priorities? What are you looking for? Um, and that will help determine, you know, what kind of house you buy at that time.
Yeah. I think your clients that you just had that they're like an anomaly because they were very sure of what they wanted. Like even house styles, like a lot of times your clients like they don't know, especially first time uh, home buyers, like they don't know exactly what they want and they're not thinking of the things like because you have done this a few times and this is what you do for work, like you give good insight for like helping them think about like think ahead a little bit.
Yeah.
um
Also think too that because of the economy, because of interest rates, because of home prices, and because of just lifestyle things, a lot of people are buying their first house later in life.
mhm.
I mean, you talked about you bought your first house when you were 21. I don't think many 21-year-olds are buying houses right now. So, then people are buying houses in their late 20s or their early 30s, and they've, had some milestones in their life that they've accomplished, or they've had more time to think about what they want in
Mhm.
their house. So that may have something to do with why it's like, oh, okay, we're not really buying a starter home. We're buying a, house to raise our family in. Whereas, when you're 21, you're not really thinking about, let me buy this house to raise my family in. You're thinking, let me buy this house to, entertain, or to, have
Mhm.
people over, or whatever it is. Um, so I think that probably has a lot to do with it too.
Yeah. And I
Um,
mean, prices uh, are so different because when I was 21, like it made financial sense to buy a house because there was like a $200 difference from my rent to my mortgage. That is not the case today. There's way more than a $200 difference. And I think even like renting is
Renting has gotten expensive
expensive.
too. I mean, there is a little bit of a difference, but I think that, you know, renting you're not gaining anything by renting,
Hmm.
whereas, buying you're gaining equity, you're gaining value in your property, you're getting tax benefits. So there are a lot of benefits to owning, but thinking, another thing too with the way the job market is in the economy, that some people, especially younger, don't want to be tied to a specific area. So
Hmm.
it's like, well, if I buy a house here and I'm able to find a better job, 100 miles away or in a different state or whatever it is, it's like, well, then I got to worry about selling my house and finding something else. Like if I'm in a lease, I can end my lease and move.
Yeah.
So I think there's a little bit of flexibility in renting. Um, but I think there's a lot of benefits in purchasing, and if you do get transferred, there's potential of turning it into an investment property, or
Hmm.
you know something along those lines. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, I had a closing recently with a client who was 25, and it we were talking at closing about how there's not many 25-year-olds that are buying houses,
Right.
at this point, and that he had done well in uh, saving money, and doing things that helped his credit to put him in a position to be able to buy a home. It did require him to, live with his parents for a while, which I think is, we always talk about, we're not raising our kids to live in our basement.
Hmm.
Um, which I think the sentiment behind that is that we're raising our kids to, be productive, and to, have goals, and to, strive for something. Um, but looking at the economy and the job market and everything like that, I do think that our kids will probably live with us for, a couple years after they graduate, just to get on their feet, to get some
Hmm.
savings, to get, their credit built, and, to do some things that will allow them to be able to purchase a home. I don't see them coming out of college and being able to purchase a home, or maybe even really afford to rent something on their own right away. Yeah, I think the examples that we talked about, are not necessarily mistakes. I don't know that there's a mistake in, buying your first home, unless, you buy something that's falling apart and it becomes a money pit. I think it's lifestyle. I think it's preferences. And I think, your lifestyle changes, your preferences change. And then when a lot of times when you go to buy your second home, you're like, hey, had this, worked great in my first house for the time being, but now I need this.
Hmm.
Um, so I guess the only real mistake that I could look at is, if you bought a fixer upper and got in over your head on what the renovations were going to be. I remember back in '08, when all the foreclosures were happening, everybody wanted a fixer upper.
Hmm.
That was the best deal that you could get out there. You could go in and put your personal touches on it and everything like that, which I think is great. The people that bought houses then and did the renovations, made a ton of money. Not only did the home prices increased, but they also increased the value by the improvements that they did
Hmm.
on the house. But I think a lot of people got tired of living in a construction zone
Yeah.
or, having to do constant renovations to the house. So most people that I talk to now, they're looking for a move-in ready home.
Yeah.
They're looking for something that's already been completed and renovated. Um, I personally feel like, and I think we've hit on this a little bit about our house, is something that's move-in ready, something that you can live in and live in comfortably and upgrade as you live there.
Hmm.
I mean, our house didn't have a lot of upgrades when we bought it, um, but there are things that we have been able to upgrade as we've lived here. But everything was functioning, and we could use it as it was.
Right. And I feel like going back to the foreclosures, like the people who were successful in that with their fixer uppers, like they had a plan.
Right.
They didn't go in blind. And a lot of people do that, or they did the research. Because I know for sure you see stuff on the internet and you're like, oh, I can do that. And then when you get into it, it's like, oh, actually, that's really complicated. And now it's expensive because I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
Um, and I think just across the board, that's like to have a realistic plan, um, budgeting out for things, and going back to what you look for in your first home versus like now, the difference is there's a lot of things that even 8 years ago I wanted to do in this house that now that I have lived here and I've used, like the kitchen, for example, like the kitchen functions. It
Mm-hmm.
does, like it does what it needs to do. I mean, we fixed that little bitty pantry situation, but everything else, like cabinet wide, like everything works for being convenient and functional. And so it's like, do I really need to gut it out and make it completely different? No.
Right. Yeah, we were talking about that the other day. There are a lot of things when we first walked through the house that were like, if we'd had the money and the capability to do it when we bought, we would have done these things. And as we've lived here, we're like, oh yeah, well, I'm glad we didn't do that because we want to do this, or,
Hmm.
and I think that, as you live somewhere and your day-to-day life, you're like, oh well, this would actually be a lot better if it was like this, or I'm glad we didn't do that because that wouldn't actually work with the way that our day-to-day life goes.
Hmm.
um, so I think there's a lot of things like that you realize as you're living in a home that you're like, ah, yeah, I wish we could change that, or I'm glad we didn't change that because what's here actually functions well.
Hmm.